Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Casey Kadams, and I'm the executive, the First Lady of Washington State's very excited. I'm the executive director of the U.S. Climate Alliance. For those who are still getting to know us, which candidly is not that many people in this room, we are a bipartisan climate action coalition of 25 U.S. governors, representing 55% of the U.S. population and 60% of the U.S. economy. Together, our governors are sprinting hand in hand to secure America's net zero future. They know, like you and I, that that future is healthier, it's safer, it's cleaner, more resilient, and brighter. In a moment, you'll hear directly from our governors about how they're moving America closer to that future. But before we get to our big announcement, I want to thank you, all of you, our partners in this room, for being here with us today in New York, and for those who are tuning in on the live stream. And I see a number of familiar faces, particularly in the front row, so I'd like to take a moment and just ask those of you in the front row who are state officials from across our alliance to please stand for a moment so we can all give you a round of applause. None of the work that we do in our states would be possible without these folks. Now listen, we know that there's a lot going on at Climate Week. A few of you who have been here since Sunday or Monday like me might even be a little worn out by now. And I just want to assure you, you made a great decision this morning by coming here to be with us. There's no better place to be. As you can see behind me, we're joined today by not one, not two, not three, but four of our country's biggest climate champions. New York Governor Kathy Hochul, Washington Governor Jay Inslee, Maine Governor Janet Mills, and our National Climate Advisor, Ali Zaidi. Let's give them a hand. Now, together, these governors are boldly demonstrating to the rest of the country and to the world that when we come together and take collective action, there is no limit to what we can achieve. And we've gathered here at the American Institute of Architects Center for Architecture by Design. And yes, for anyone who missed it, that was an architecture pun. So, for more than 15 years, AIA has been empowering its architects and their firms to make America's buildings cleaner and carbon neutral. As you'll hear today, our governors in the Alliance are committed to doing their part in their state capitals, working together across state lines, and in partnership with the Biden administration to achieve cleaner buildings. And just as a point of personal privilege, I'm especially proud of what they're announcing today because it serves as a powerful demonstration that when states work together, we can go further faster. And there's no one better to tell you more than the governor hosting us here in her home state, a governor joining us for the second year running at Climate Week, and a governor who is showing us every day that what you heard from Jay-Z and Alicia Keys is in fact true, that there's nothing you can't do in New York. Governor Hochul.
If we're going to quote musical talent, what about Taylor Swift's immortal "Welcome to New York"? So we're delighted to host you here, you and 6 billion other people who found their way to our streets this particular week, this convergence of brilliance from around the planet. With Climate Week, it's United Nations General Assembly, and of course the Clinton Global Initiative, but it's a week we're very proud of, but a week that all of us locals know this is the week you take the subway like I did yesterday. It was great, it was clean, it was fast, so there's my promotion, and next year or year after, with congestion pricing is in effect in the first city and state in America, I think you'll see a few less cars, so that's what we can look forward to. So thank you to my fellow governors for their leadership, and Jay Inslee, you've been synonymous with pushing this country forward and a reckoning of our practices, what we've done as a people to have this state of affairs we're experiencing now. I mean, you've been, like Al Gore, been a voice for a long time. A lot of people weren't listening. So I want to thank my good friend Jay Inslee for his leadership and his dedication of his life to helping battle the effects of mankind's assault on Mother Earth. So let's give another round of applause to Jay Inslee. And another colleague of mine, Janet Mills, and I think there's 9 women governors, so we can hold up one bar. I mean, we all get together, and there's a special bond because we are also parents, and you feel very seriously as a mother, the first mother of New York in that sense, our weight of responsibility to what we're doing for our children's children as well. And I thank you for what you're doing in an incredibly beautiful state, and I thank you for joining this effort as well. We talk about what we're doing here today, and I am so cognizant of the fact that we are the first generation to really feel the effects of climate change. And indeed, we are the last generation that can do anything meaningful about it. That's the sense of urgency all of us and Casey and Ellie and our administration in Washington, the Biden administration, bring to this, and that's why this climate alliance is so important. We're not talking about an impending threat. We're talking about something that is in the here and now. And as governors, representing 25 states with this alliance, but speaking for all of them, this has been a hell of a year. 2023, I think we're at day 270 or so of this year. My own state, a 1,000-year flooding event. Now, I'm not sure who knew back then. We're keeping track 1,000 years ago, but that's what they tell me. But that, I was going with multiple year after year, 100-year flooding events, and now we hit our first 1,000-year event. We had record snowfall, and I'm from Buffalo, and I'm sure they could handle this in Maine just as well, but 7 feet of snow, record, just 9 months ago in a 36-hour period, the worst blizzard in our history, taking the lives of many New Yorkers. And not to mention, just the year before, we had not 1, but 2 hurricanes my first 10 days on the job. More than Florida had that year. Something's up. And the fact that New York City and the city of Syracuse were tied for having the worst air quality on the planet 4 months ago because of the wildfires from Quebec sending down the billowing orange smoke that we were all breathing. Heck, it reminded me of my childhood growing up next to the Bethlehem Steel plant in Buffalo, where we breathed orange air every day. We didn't think anything of it. And swam in a polluted lake, one of the greatest freshwater lakes on this earth. So I have been seared in the knowledge of my childhood of what I saw and the reality of what I'm dealing with as governor, and all of our governors have. I just was with the governor of Hawaii talking about the unprecedented climate effects that destroyed one of his beautiful communities, Maui. And so this is what we deal with. So this is not hypothetical. It's not this is going to happen someday. This is the here and now, my friends. And shame on all of us if we don't act with that urgency every single day. So I'm proud to announce that the Climate Alliance has agreed to make many more significant commitments. This is what we do together. And there's a lot of power in this. When you represent 60% of the country's economy, you can have a real impact, a broad-based impact. So here we're talking about how to make buildings more energy efficient and reduce carbon emissions. And collectively, we believe that banding together, we can quadruple the installation of heat pumps by the end of the decade. Building emissions make up more than 30% of global greenhouse emissions. And that's why, to reduce this, we look to our buildings. Now, when you come to New York City, we have some rather iconic buildings. Many of you think of one. Name a big building not far from here. Yes, the Empire State Building. Bingo. And even think about the Empire State Building. It was built in the depths of the Depression. They're building it. Started in 1930. Finished it in 1931, 13 months later. That was extraordinary. But now we're literally changing and have changed the Empire State Building. And it's committed leadership, like Tony Melkin, who was one of the panelists at the Clinton Global Initiative. And the Empire State Building absolutely completed an entire retrofit. And they now have reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by more than 50%. That's possible in one building. Imagine the ripple effect of that with all the skyscrapers you see here. That's what we're going for. So we're continuing these efforts. So collectively we've said, we can do more. Let's set the bar high. Let's reach for the stars. So we have agreed to have 20 million installations of heat pumps across our states by the year 2030. 20 million by 2030. And we want to ensure that at least 40% of the benefits flow into disadvantaged communities. We could never leave people behind, because these are the people that tended to live in places like the trailer park my parents were in next to a steel plant, because they couldn't lift themselves out of it. We will not let that happen to this generation and the next generation. They do not deserve to live in an asthma alley because of what's going on in their own community. So these heat pumps will eliminate tons and tons of carbon pollution, but it's also about shaping a clean energy future as we strive to do even more here. In New York, we have a goal of achieving 2 million climate-friendly homes by 2030 and to be net zero by 2050. All of you younger people, make sure we hit that in 2050. We have a responsibility to every single New Yorker. Make sure, regardless of their economic status, that they have access to these clean energy options. That's why today I'm also announcing for the state of New York a $200 million initiative to ensure that we can help lower-income individuals be able to retrofit their homes, make these conversions, make it so it's easy for them to do, and they can start having a reduction not just in the emissions, but also in their bills ultimately when this conversion's complete. We call it the Empower Plus program. They can add insulation, energy-efficient appliances, clean energy, and how about heat pumps? That's what we're going for. It's all about the heat pumps today, right? So it's going to take some work. That's all right. We're up for the task. That's what governors do. We work every single day. But I want people to look back at this time as a turning point in how we take this climate assault seriously and do something once and for all about it. Urgency and action together means we'll save the planet for future generations. That's our responsibility. That's the responsibility of every single person who breathes air on this beautiful planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Governor Hochul. So next up, we're going to hear from a governor who has been with the Alliance from the very start, a governor who had the vision to launch our coalition back in 2017. Ever since, he has been showing the rest of the country just how much state climate leadership matters. I've had the pleasure of knowing him since I was an intern in his congressional office more than 14 years ago, and he's the reason why I work in climate today. Someone who needs no introduction at Climate Week, Governor Inslee.
I recognize talent very, very early. Thank you, Governor of New York. It's great to be here. You got a great city. Trudy and I were just up looking at an office that have urban agriculture. They had a garden up on a 12th floor, and we enjoyed some of their tomatoes. And Trudy had the line, if you can grow it here, you can grow it anywhere. And I thought that really says something about New York and the state of New York. Thanks for your leadership. This is very exciting to me. I remember when Jerry Brown and I of California had this idea, and he says, I don't know if this is going to work. And I said, the day will come where we're going to get 20 million people heat pumps, Jerry, and here we are today. So there's some good news in this regard. Look, I think all Americans have certain rights. Among those rights are the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of heat pumps. And the reason this is so important to Americans is pretty simple. We want to be warm in the winter, and we want to be cool in the summer, and we want to prevent the climate from collapsing all year long. And there is no greater invention in human history to do those three things than a heat pump. Not only because it can keep you warm in the winter, but it can keep you cool in the summer. And it's kind of unfortunately named, because right now people are having as much trouble staying cool in the summer as they are staying warm in the winter. And with increasing climate change, we are both fighting climate change at its source, which is reducing the need for oil and gas, but we're also helping people to accommodate these warmer and hotter temperatures. We're starting to need air conditioning in Seattle, Washington. That means we got a problem, and we're helping people across the country deal with that problem. I think heat pumps are the most beautiful technology invented since the wool socks. And so I am very excited about what we're doing here for people. And I really am excited about the U.S. Climate Alliance leading this effort. It does show you what we can do in the states. But before I say anything about the states, I want to credit the leadership of President Joe Biden with the Inflation Reduction Act, which is going to get $180 million in my state to help people get heat pumps. Thank you, Joe Biden, and thank you all for your leadership. But this is just not kind of a wish list of 25 governors. It's an actual meat-on-the-bones plan to get this job done. I want to share with you how we're going to get this job in Washington State. First, we have created a cap and invest program, which has created over $1 billion of resources where we can actually use to help people get these heat pumps. And we've committed already $150 million, almost matching the federal grant, to actually buy people, low-income people, to bring equity to this issue and environmental justice at the same time we're saving the planet. And that $150 million matched with what the federal government's going to do is going to help people all across the state of Washington when it is needed, even in my state. We're putting meat on the bone. And we're doing that with the cap and invest bill, which makes sure that the polluters pay for this. The polluters ought to pay for this, not just ordinary citizens. And to me, this is a fair way to finance this. Now, of course, that's been attacked, but we won't take no for an answer. Secondly, we are making sure that we are moving forward with a new way to heat our buildings. Connecting a building today with dirty, toxic gas, it'd be like connecting your house, instead of a garage for your car, to put in a stable. Gas is an old, antiquated, dirty, dangerous product. So I'm proud to tell you we were the first state in the United States, by using our building codes, to make sure that people, when they get a new home or a new office, they get a heat pump, not dirty gas, which creates 16% increased rates of asthma and contributes to climate change. That's the future, and that's the present, and we're going to make sure it happens in my state. Now, I think there was an emerging discussion at the UN the other day. We were proud of Governor Newsom, who addressed the UN, who made something very clear. Climate change fundamentally is a fossil fuel problem. The source of climate change is fossil fuels. The source of climate change in our homes and offices is gas hookups. Those gas hookups need to stop, and they need to stop today. And I'll tell you why. There's a physical principle, I think it was discovered by Einstein, that when you are in a hole, stop digging. We are in a hole because of fossil fuels. We need to stop digging a deeper hole. We need to get people heat pumps and solar panels and insulations, and that's going to cure this problem. And I'm glad we're doing it, starting in 25 states. So I am very excited about the progress we're making. I look forward to this delivery, and I look forward to a lot of more comfortable, less utility bill victimized people in these 25 states. I went to a little house in Wenatchee, Washington the other day. I met this woman of a certain age. She was just thrilled. We got her a little insulation, and her bill went down from $200 for utilities, and it's kind of cold in Wenatchee and hot in the summer, down to $50. She was thrilled. Let's get people to not have to pay for a dirty gas more than they should be paying, getting them to less paid electricity and keep them warmer and cooler. That's the future for America, and we're starting with 25 states. Congratulations, U.S. Climate Alliance.
All right. Well, I just want to say I'm so excited to read that version of the Declaration of Independence. Thank you so much, Governor Inslee. We are so lucky to have another one of our co-chairs of our coalition with us today. This governor is a big part of the reason why we're here talking about heat pumps and clean buildings today. In Maine, she is showing what is possible when you set big, bold goals and then deliver on them. And most importantly, she's now bringing the rest of our members along with her. So please help me welcome Governor Mills.
Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. Well, it's a pleasure to be here in the Big Apple, and I'll tell Jay right now, we're not going to give up our wool socks in Maine. February comes too soon, but with heat pumps, we're going to be plenty warm, I think. I'm honored to join my fellow governors, Kathy Hochul and Jay Inslee, and fellow members of the U.S. Climate Alliance, which I'm pleased to co-chair, in making the historic announcement, which will accelerate our path to a clean energy future. Maine knows a little bit about using high-efficiency heat pumps to cut our carbon emissions, to cut our energy costs, and to create good-paying, green-collar jobs. Maine uses more home heating oil per capita than any other state in the nation. Nearly 60% of our homes rely on oil for heat. We have an older housing stock, and the oil bills are piling up. And we send over $4 billion a year out of state to fossil fuel companies to pay for our heat and use of fossil fuels. Over the last 2 years, Maine people have been forced to pay high energy costs as a direct consequence of our over-reliance on global energy markets to heat our homes and power our businesses. Heat pumps are affordable heating and cooling appliances. They work well in cold climates like ours. They're much more efficient than window air conditioners for cooling and more efficient than oil-burning furnaces and safer than kerosene and oil-burning furnaces and propane heaters and electric baseboard for heating. More importantly, they're easy to install and even easier to use. I sound like a salesperson. Well, I guess I am. There are 23 of them in the Blaine house, and they keep my staff and I pretty cozy. But that is why several years ago, I set a goal of installing 100,000 heat pumps in Maine by 2025 to reduce our dependency on fossil fuels and support clean energy jobs, the kinds of jobs that attract young people, young families to Maine. And to meet that goal, we offered rebates to Maine people and businesses to purchase heat pumps. We started programs to help low-income homeowners with heat pump installation. And we partnered with our community college system to train up hundreds of heat pump installers and assemblers to serve those new customers across the state. Thousands of Maine people answered the call in a very short time. And thanks to them, thanks to the hundreds of small businesses who install heat pumps now, our state has met our goal 2 years ahead of schedule. We put Maine at the forefront for heat pump installations nationwide. Now, 100,000 may not sound like a big number to somebody in the Big Apple, for instance, but given our population of about 1.3 million, number of households about 500, a little over 500,000, dwellings, residential dwellings, that's a pretty good number. We're on our way, and we're not stopping there. Earlier this year, the Washington Post talked with a woman from Freeport, Maine, Mariana, her name is. They asked her if she missed her propane furnace after installing a heat pump. Her response, quote, "Oh, hell no." She went on to say that her heat pump is comfortable, quiet, and a really good system. She said, "I'm excited that our state is so forward-thinking. And we have to be because we live in a drop-dead gorgeous part of the country, and we're investing in keeping it that way," she said. And to that I say, hell yeah, Mariana. A few weeks ago, I welcomed Climate Advisor Ali Zaidi, White House Climate Advisor, to our state to celebrate Maine's leadership and to announce our new goal of installing another 175,000 heat pumps by 2027. And we're on our way. People are seeing the efficiency, the comfort, the financial benefits to heat pumps, and they're so happy not to send that oil bill in every month right out of their pocket to some out-of-state fuel companies, oil companies, for instance, and to not have that money in their pockets. We're going to reach our goal. by using more than $70 million in federal funds through President Biden's Inflation Reduction Act. We're going to offer rebates for consumers to weatherize their homes and install systems like heat pumps and other efficiency appliances. Transitioning to heat pumps in Maine is creating good-paying jobs. It's curbing our carbon emissions. It's cutting costs for families. It's making people more comfortable in their own homes. So Maine is meeting our climate goals, and we're proud to lead the way as part of the U.S. Climate Alliance to encourage other states to do the same. It's time for every member of the U.S. Climate Alliance to make sure we install 20 million heat pumps nationwide by 2030. We'll do that. And with the combined leadership of the U.S. Climate Alliance, representing, as you know, more than half the U.S. population and 60% of the national economy, we can turn the tide on the threat of climate change and build a greener, cleaner future for all. I know that the Biden administration shares the U.S. Climate Alliance's commitment to building that future, and I look forward to hearing more about the administration's efforts from White House Climate Advisor Ali Zaidi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Governor Mills. And finally, I'm so proud to introduce a leader who is a partner to the Alliance in every sense of the word. He has helped us forge a new kind of state-federal partnership, one where we take on complex challenges, work together to find solutions, and get things done for the American people. It's because of his support and the leadership of President Biden in delivering historic federal resources that today's announcement is possible. So please help me in welcoming White House National Climate Advisor Ali Zaidi.
Casey, thank you so much, and so grateful to be here with all of you. So often when we talk about climate change, we talk about it in the horror that it's producing for our communities. The skies turning orange, the fields that have gone dry, the smoke that we're breathing into our lungs, the coastlines that have become greater vectors of risk. And it's really easy to take all of that in and get resigned to this sense of doom and despair. But this gathering, this coalition, the action you all are taking, I think, tell a different and more powerful story about what climate change is all about. It is the spur that is bringing us all together to harness the power and ingenuity of the American people, to square our shoulders and to lean in to the solutions that we have at our disposal, not only to cut greenhouse gas emissions, but to lift up communities that haven't seen justice in decades, to lift up workers into jobs that pay good wages and good benefits. And today's announcements do absolutely that. We've got governors on the stage and represented in this room who have produced the kind of inventive spirit that really matches the urgency of this moment. When in April of 22, Earth Day, President visited the state of Washington. I remember chatting with Governor Inslee at the time, and we had not passed the Inflation Reduction Act. And we talked about what produced some of the greatest salience as we were trying to get votes together and get Congress to take action. And one of those really powerful arguments back then, when it wasn't certain we would pass the legislation, was that we knew from action that had already been taken on the ground in the states that this was the single best way for us to tackle rising consumer energy costs, for us to boost energy security in a durable fashion, the only real way to energy security, and that this was going to produce a manufacturing renaissance and a jobs boom all across the country. Not only are the states our partner in implementing these historic pieces of legislation, you are the ones that helped produce the inspiration and the proof points that helped us get it over the line. So for all of that, we are so grateful. But now comes the hard part, the implementation. And, you know, when we look at the power sector, where we've been ratcheting up clean energy year over year, where 80+% of what's deployed on our grid is clean today, where just since 2021, we've added 10 million homes worth of clean electricity here in the United States. You look at the transportation sector, where we've doubled the number of chargers, we've doubled the number of models, double again by the end of next year, we've tripled the deployment. We've got real tailwinds in sectors where we've figured it out. I remember chatting with someone who writes in this space a year ago, and they said, what is the moonshot in the Inflation Reduction Act? And I think I surprised him by saying, I think the moonshot in the Inflation Reduction Act is our big bet on decarbonizing buildings. This is the hardest thing we can do, and thanks to these folks' leadership, this is the thing we are doing, thanks to your leadership. Here's what happens if we succeed. We've brought together at the White House the manufacturers who want to invest in the United States. And when we ask them, you know, you've got tax incentives now, you've got federal dollars flowing to the states to stand up home retrofit programs that many of our NGO partners are actually helping support through their know-how and expertise. You've got dollars flowing now to help states level up on building codes. What do you need? What will give you that confidence? And what they said to us was, we need folks to set very clear targets so that we can size up the market and know that this is a good bet to bet on the United States. These folks, with their goal, 20 million heat pumps in this decade, are making it very clear. It is a very good bet to bet on the United States when it comes to taking bold and urgent climate action. So we're going to create those manufacturing jobs, in many cases in brownfields that were fenced away and left out, places that had lost economic opportunity and with it brought in despair and hopelessness into communities. Those places are turning back on to be the places where we stamp climate solutions and clean energy projects made in America. But we're also creating a massive job opportunity. I was with the governor in Maine as she set a new goal because they reached their first one early, which I still think is pretty remarkable. You know, in climate, if we look at the history of climate rhetoric, you don't normally have politicians who set a goal and reach it early. So let that be maybe the real challenge here, is not only will we get to 20 million, but maybe if we work hard enough, we can get there early. But whether it's the community colleges or the sheet metal workers, I went to Atlanta, Georgia, where in a union hall we were talking to sheet metal workers who've got massive demand in their apprenticeship program to go install these heat pumps. And whether it's Georgia or it's Maine, whether it's the East Coast or the West, this is a technology that works, and it works to reduce costs in a very aggressive way. Just think about a family budget. Home energy costs, 50% of it goes into heating and cooling. 50% of it. And what if we had an app that could solve for that part of your family budget? We've got an app for that, and we've got to deploy it aggressively all across the country. So look, as an administration, just this week, we've announced additional funding to help states boost their ambition on building codes. We're working aggressively to implement the zero emissions home rebate program in partnership with states. We've got this week out almost $5 billion through the EPA for climate pollution reduction grants that frankly help us harness the full opportunity of transitioning to a lower carbon future. We will be your partner every single step of the way, but we are so grateful to Casey and the Alliance for frankly taking on the hardest stuff. The last time Casey and I got together, we were lined up with a bunch of states who had decided to take on the industrial sector, steel, cement, and aluminum. So for a long time in climate parlance, the industrial sector and the building sector were the hard to decarbonize. And I think in the Biden administration, we figured out when we meet hard to decarbonize, we phone the govs. So thank you so much for your leadership, for unlocking what I think represents the full opportunity space on tackling the climate crisis, for chasing, as the President of the United States does, the possibilities on the other side of bold climate action. And I think a year into implementing the Inflation Reduction Act, almost a year and a half for the bipartisan infrastructure law, 2.5 years into the Biden administration, what's so heartening to me is that we're moving so far beyond words on a page. You know, this week in New York, the Champlain-Hudson transmission line, which will deliver clean power for 20% of the city, turned dirt and started getting underway. In Maine, they've blown through records, but not only are they installing heat pumps, they took a former paper mill that had gone away in Madison, Maine, and turned it back on to manufacturing using wood waste, insulation product that's getting shipped all across the country. This is the moment when we turn on all of our capabilities and capacities. Moses Lake, there's a mill there where there used to be solar jobs. We'd wave to them as they went overseas. Now we have a policy and a partner in the Gov that has allowed that mill to come back, and they're making ingots and wafers that are being stamped into solar panels in Dalton, Georgia. So all across the country, I think we're seeing not just pie in the sky, but steel in the ground and money in the pockets of the American people because of the bold action you all are taking. We're very grateful to be your partner. Thank you.
So that's a wrap on our program. We've set a really big goal. We're excited to get to work. Thank you so much for being with us today. And we're going to do a quick photo and just ask that everyone please remain seated. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it.